Today on Heart to Heart, we're asking, why do you think women cheat? And your feedback is tremendous. Your feedback is quite revealing for that matter. And Pastor T, during the break, we were saying that this conversation is deep, and you're coming from, an angle where you're unpacking the underlying matters. But sometimes, even if you look at the responses, it's more so, is this or that? It's this chick is just not getting enough attention. She's just not doing this. And then you find equally men or women not wanting to go deeper within themselves. Yesterday, we were having a conversation on mental health, basically how you're managing your mental health through this time. And you find that it has a lot of work. Yeah. Men will do different work in therapy, and women will do different work in therapy. So how do you reach a point where, as a man or a woman, you say, I want to look deeper into this, when knowing very well, if you look deeper at what you're going through, it may lead to the break of a marriage, it may lead to a realization of yourself that this is not the best life I can live, and that can look different in different ways, So what's your perspective?
Personally, I think if you've never been hurt, you may not understand what hurting people really means. If you've never gone through a heartbreak, you may not have the consciousness of understanding all those who are going through heartbreaks.
Wait, someone says, Bright Sunday says, damu ya uko.
Damu ya uko.
Yeah. Makes someone also go through aspects of cheating.
Yeah, that's very true. Mm-hmm. When you talk of damu uko, is what we call generational patterns. Yeah. Like you come from a very polygamous home and you realize that that pattern has been pursuing you. You want to settle somewhere, and that pattern is very stubborn. It's there in the Bible. There's a whole generational pattern from what we call the tribe of Judah. And Judah comes and messes up with a girl called Tamar, and later gets children. And, it just opens a door of perversiveness. Yeah. Around 10 generations later, you find David. And the greatest battle of David was not loving God or anything. It was a battle of sexual immorality. Now look at the son of David, Solomon. And how is Solomon born? Solomon is born out of a woman whom David killed, this Bathsheba. So Uriah dies, David gets Bathsheba, and Solomon is born. So he's born from a very chaotic kind of situation. And the man perfects the art. His record, no one has broken 1,000 women, 300 wives, and 700 concubines. So you look at that pattern, you understand also, it is there. Yeah. People ignore. It is as deep as when you talk about damu ya uko, who you are named. Sometimes you realize you are named after your grandfather and you had 7 wives. And now you're in second year and you're in the 5th relationship. And you can't, you truly you want to settle to one person. But there is such a spiritual atmosphere that cannot permit you, because this is beyond moral proclivity. You are dealing with a very intense spiritual reality that can only be dealt spiritually, and you can't introduce logic or even can't introduce reason to something that is very spiritual. Sometimes people fight these things, but you look, when you go to the medical world, it just proves to you there is something we call generational pattern. When you go to a family that is diabetic, you could be born healthy, eating everything healthy, but boom, there is something that is transferred through the bloodline. There is genetic transferring and all that, and you realize, oh, my grandfather was diabetic, I'm now becoming diabetic. These things are always there. That's why people always ask you, are there any diseases in your family line? Yeah. But sometimes we are ignorant of the spiritual realities, and not every battle we face it has moral inclination. Some of them have very deep-rooted spiritual mysteries in them, and they ought to be understood, because you can't break what you've not understood. You can't conquer what you've not mastered. So that's a very good contribution.
Right. Yeah. So then you can give us your perspective from what I asked you previously.
Yes.
Yeah, which was when we trivialize what we're feeling.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. If you've never gone through a heartbreak, you may never understand what it means. And heartbreaks have their ways of, just changing men. There are people who will avoid, and they're like, no, what I've gone through, I wouldn't like my heart to be broken again. So they avoid and hide in many things. But there are also those who go through it and they're like, wow, you mean this is what people feel when they are betrayed or heartbroken? And they become more conscious when it comes to handling other people, because they're like, I wouldn't like anyone to go through what I've gone through. But we live in a society whereby, number one, sex has been trivialized. We live in a society whereby now cheating is also being trivialized. And we live in a society, when sex is trivialized, then automatically cheating looks like it's the order of the day. And what we need to understand is that when the fabric of morality is torn, you're already losing a nation. Because there are consequences of all these things that we are beginning to see.
You know, in 2013, 14, 15,
yes,
there's a whole conversation, and you say, even in Parliament or so, and you could see the Member of Parliament then throwing at each other words like, how, you know, you don't have the moral standing to speak about this. We don't have the moral standing to speak about this. It was a whole contentious thing. And then fast forward to present day, their talk on society, we're seeing right now very rampant. It's almost very filthy. To the point of, I remember some years ago, Kenya being ranked one of the most bitter countries, you know, ever, you know, in the world. So we have this thing happening, and then, but most people are approaching it like it's new. Like we didn't have a pattern that we saw from 2012 going forward to now. The Gen Z, the young people, are being called different names. They're being applauded, but they're also being castigated in the same breath. So everything is seeming to look normal, but it's not. And then there's almost like an amnesia that is not really there. You know? So what happens when you don't look at the past to inform the future and everything seems new?
Of course, you'll never manage the future if you don't understand the past, because everything that is appearing in the future has its roots in the past. And that's what I was saying. When we begin to trivialize these things, we will not trivialize their consequences. I remember the former president on one of the national holidays, he read and spoke about the increasing number of single mothers. And I read the statistics, and they said Africa is leading in terms of single mothers. So when we trivialize sex, when cheating becomes the order of the day, what happens? We're increasing baby daddies. The concept of abortion will always be on the increase. What we need to understand, there's a lot of, what will I say? There's a lot of things that go to a person who has procured an abortion. I'm saying this with a lot of respect. There's a lot of emotional baggage. There's a lot of healing that is needed, because, you know, blood is blood at the end of the day. So that's why we are beginning to see very bitter people, very vengeful people, people who are broken, people who are battered, but they need to appear okay before the screen and all that. Some people have they have trivialized sex, but at the end of the day, the way man was designed and the way a woman was designed, especially for women, sex is one of the most precious things that a woman can give you. They say when you treat a woman right, the only way she can reciprocate, and this is not to say, I'm trying to put it in a context that will not be misquoted. You know, nowadays we have people who just take one sentence and throw it. This is what happens. The best thing a woman can give you is herself. That's the best thing. So even if you're just trying to show generosity or kindness and everything, when she senses there is a bond, the best thing she can give you is herself.
But now, when you look at what some men will say, that is called cheapness or looseness, right? So whatever now the conversation of cheating becomes, buy her food, buy her this, get her that, she'll give you herself.
Now the problem is that,
so how do you rationalize that?
Society has reduced it to a level that it looks like it's a bag of chips and I have your body. That's the problem. But I'm just talking about genuine gestures. You know, like genuinely you're trying to support somebody, and when she looks at you, she feels like this is the best thing that I can give you. Someone mentioned about poverty and all these things, and what I could be giving could be pocket change, but to another person it's something major. I might come and give you 10,000, but to you, that's your livelihood. But for me, that's my fuel. And, you know, this person will look at you from, you know, you mean you can give me 10,000 just like this. So economic variations also matter here. And what we will not run away from, sex is more, it has a spiritual transaction, it has a physical transaction, and it has an emotional transaction. And I believe this is what now produces very wounded people, very bitter people. And when we now meet in the place of conversations, they want to normalize it, because at the end of the day, if we normalize it, then I don't look weird and I don't look queer. But deep down we are hurting, deep down we are broken. We just need to lay the matter on the table and have the conversations we are having today. No one walks out of a room having cheated and they feel proud of themselves. There's also that guilt, emotional, what do I call it? Emotional entanglement, and sometimes you just want out. But this thing is meeting something that possibly subconsciously you needed it met. I said possibly You're looking for a father figure, someone you never got. Possibly it's attention that you don't get at home. Possibly you are bitter and you are wounded because no one has ever spoken words of approval. Here is someone speaking good words over your life. Possibly it's revenge. You know, this guy is doing it and he's not hiding. It's all over my face and I need to go out also and do it because it's a concept of revenge. We might have the reasons that we are doing whatever we are doing, but at the end of the day, no one leaves that bed feeling proud and saying, you know, I've just conquered. There's a lot of guilt, emotional entanglement, and all that. And personally, I come from a school of thought whereby destiny must be the vibration that controls every action in my life. What am I saying? If I have someone who's perpetually treating me in a way that I feel I don't deserve, then I don't think I need to give them the leeway to control my life. Simply, I was born alone. I have a very independent and very specific destiny. We met on the path of life. It's either we are going in the right direction or we are not going in any direction. So I have the choice to decide that this is where I'm going. And that's why when the end is defined, when I know this is my destination, it becomes very easy to know who to drop and who to pick in the path of destiny. And even that begins to control my behavior and my moral values and even my direction. Because many of us live for now, but they say great men live from the future. So whatever they are doing now is dictated by the big picture of what they are seeing in the future. Emotions, I mean, relationships are very key to determine how far you can go. When I went through my breakup, I wasted 2 years. Then later I went and checked on the profile of this lady.
What do you mean by wasting 2 years? What does that mean?
I didn't do anything. I was numb. Because when you're emotionally numb, you lose the vibration of life. Nothing makes sense. You're just clouded by darkness. You lose aggressiveness. You feel like everything has collapsed. And for 2 years, I was doing nothing. That time I was doing music. So not going to the studio, reduced in my performance, almost got fired from my work. Then I later checked and I realized this lady is adding weight. Her life is going on very well. And of course, the guy that they were involved in was richer than me, had more, you know, everything that I didn't have, the guy had.
So it even made matters worse?
No, that makes it worse, especially for a man.
Yeah.
Sometimes as a man, you want the person who's taking over to be, you know, not of your level. You can brag. But when that guy, you know, the owner is angali useme, enyata kami ningekuwa udem, pia mimi ningejiacha, you know. So it was damaging, you know, because some of the things you're going through are not out of design, it's out of life. Being born in a poor family is not you choosing poverty, it's just that that's part of life. So in that time, everything was running over my mind. All these things, you know, revenge and all that. But I think when the vibration of destiny came, I realized, you know what, I'm more than 25 years old. I only met this person for around 2 years. Why would I waste 25 years of living alone because of a person who showed up in my life for 2 years? I have a whole life ahead of my life. I don't know what lies ahead. There's a whole virgin destiny. There's a whole virgin future. Why should I make it look like this dark moment is an everlasting moment? And that began to program my decisions so that now I'm able to focus on where I'm going, but not trying to magnify this small thing and living from one vengeance to another. And I believe that's part of the healing that is needed. Okay.
But you know, like I said, what you're saying is ideal.
Yes.
Most of what is happening out here is not ideal.
Yes.
In fact, it's heinous. You know, people say Nairobi ni, you know, ni chafu, your dating pool.
Ni bedroom moja.
Yes, you know. And then the whole aspect of the fear of now men or women who are trying to get in the dating pool or have been in the dating pool to find just, you know, someone. It just seems almost impossible.
I don't think so.
No, but from their perspective.
Yes, yes.
Not that it's impossible, it's not, right? So how do they start conceptualizing? Now, for example, this topic is why do women cheat?
Yes.
Right? How do you get out of a rut, for example? Like speaking now from your perspective as a man to say, okay, maybe there is something possible that I can get from all this.
Personally, purpose. When you answer the question of purpose.
But do you think most people have purpose, capacity? Purpose almost becomes a word in the dictionary or something that is said day to day, but you find that a majority do, but also a majority don't. And it's a word that's thrown around. Purpose looks like Dubai. Purpose looks like, you know, just having a good job, having a good social media profile for some. right?
Yeah, that's what the world has presented.
Yes.
You know, there are three questions I feel if you answer them or if you attempt to answer them in life, they'll kind of give you a sense of direction. And I'm happy you're having this conversation. The first question is, who am I? That's a question of identity. You know, just trying to appreciate I'm unique, I'm different, I'm not like anyone else. And being unique does not make me to be... Uniqueness is my advantage. You know, who am I? What do I like? What don't I like? Must I be always in the crowd? Must I be in this mob psychology and all these things? Because what I feel like what is happening is like there's a mob psychology and we are losing us doing things that we don't even love. Responding to life in a way that we truly feel this is not how we ought to respond to life. Many people are doing things that they're not comfortable with. Deep down, they know this is not me. But that concept of trying to fit in, sometimes they realize, you know what, it's messing me up. The second question is, why am I here? And I think that's the hardest question because that's the question of purpose. And that's the question that can only be described by the designer. That's where the concept of God comes in. I've met great men, people that have broken certain ceilings, and you'll always discover the higher you go, the more you appreciate the concept of God. Because you realize that life is not a coincidence, life is not an accident, life is actually designed. The Bible says God knows the end from the beginning. So how best should I know my tomorrow if I don't stick to the one who knows the end, he that knew me before I was in my mother's womb? And you see, one of the things that has been very intentional is to kick out faith out of our ecosystem. And let me tell you the truth, look at nations that have done that, kicking out the concept of Christianity. Because Christianity bears truths. And some of these truths begin to navigate and guard the path of life. And you find many people now living purposeless life. And I think Dr. Miles Monroe said, you know, one of the greatest incident that can happen in life is not to know your purpose. Why am I here? When you don't know who you are, chances of becoming who you are not are very high. You might morph to become anything. And then the final question is, what can I offer? You know, potential. What are the deposit, precipitates of grace that are in me? Because the moment you understand I have this potential, then there is something to guard at the end of the day. I know we can put this umbrella body, but I believe it is such conversation that begin to trigger provocations of thinking and say, hey guys, could we have taken the wrong path? Because I know there is a concept of glorifying error and making it look like we cannot take the right path.
And most of the time it wins.
And become cool. And now the problem with that, I sit here as a pastor and I can tell you, our offices are filled with counselings because life operates with what you sow is what you reap. So you can't just live and assume this is it. Consequences come. We might move in a mob psychology, but when the consequences come, life rewards people individually. So that's why we need to have such conversations and begin to align, especially matters morality. I'll tell you something. A study was done, and they discovered the Great Rome, which could not be brought down by any military power or anything.
Yeah, I know that, yeah.
It was brought down because of sexual perversion.
Yeah.
This was a whole monarchy chaos, and the Great Rome came down. So when we begin to look at matters, sexuality, matters, cheatings, infidelity, we're already seeing where the society is. I remember when they were doing the Black Lives Matter in America, they dug and they discovered the core problem of the African-American community was dysfunctional families. So you have children growing up and they cannot...
Lack of present fathers.
Yeah, absent fathers, they're trying to be violent. And let me tell you the truth, that's the reality of the Gen Z. People don't understand them, but these kids have grown without their parents. Yeah. They were dumped in boarding school. They've raised themselves, and now here they are, they feel they can fight for their parents. Majority are coming from broken homes. I face this a lot when I go to high school missions. They're saying, I don't even know whether I'll meet my mom and my dad together. So if this conversation begin to happen, someone must live for something greater more than self.
Yeah.
And life will throw jabs at you. Life will position you and will always have a reason for doing what you're doing. But I think we must operate with the philosophies of what is my moral foundation, what is my guiding conscience, and how am I managing my free will? Because this is what makes men to be men.
Right, Pastor T, this is a, you know, it's going fire. It's a fire conversation. But we have to wind up. And just want to read like 2-3 responses from all of you. Hilary Kamadi says, women fall into temptation easily. Mark Ondigi says, men suffering silently, but all the blame to men. Sami Jr. says, khaki. And then Natipa Duncan says, sometimes it's the behavior of her man that makes her to cheat, which you also did mention, Pastor T. So Pastor T, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming in and having this conversation. Like I mentioned earlier in the conversation, we were supposed to have a female guest, but unfortunately she was not able to make it. But Pastor T, thank you for giving us that perspective now from a man.
Thank you.
On why you believe this is happening and in society in general. Thank you for watching Heart to Heart this Wednesday. See you again tomorrow on Spotlight. My name is Remmy Majala. Yeah.